It is my pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to this very special session today with Rob Levin. He is the co-founder and the chairman of WorkBetterNow, a company that specializes in providing U.S. companies with outstanding talent from Latin America. So before we dive in and we really get into the meat of today, which is about retaining and attracting and prospering in the workforce, just a really brief word about the fourth effect. So for those of you that don't know, we are the fastest growing board and investment marketplace for startups and growth stage companies that are seeking mentors, advisors, directors, and funders who also happen to be women. And we are also the only board and investment marketplace where women have the power to make the first move. So if you are listening to this and you are a founder of a startup or a growth stage company, please join us so you can tap into the incredible talent pool that we have here of 1,700 plus executive women. They are a great resource to build out your advisory and governing boards in our board seat exchange. Also, if you are fundraising, maybe looking for angel checks, raising a pre-seed or a seed round, then opting into our backroom investment club can be a really powerful resource for you as you scale and grow. And then also we have a powerful peer network of around 800 other startup founders. If you are listening and you are on the candidate side, you are interested in initiating or advancing your for-profit board career through serving as an advisor, a director, an observer, an angel advisor to a startup in our ecosystem, please consider joining us. So we will drop into the chat right now a couple of links. One, to our platform tours. We do them twice a week at noon Eastern Standard Time, Mondays and Thursdays. It's a great way to come, network, meet some other wonderful people, see what we're all about, and also join us, sign up. In the month of March, we do have a great promotion for Women's History Month. So we are happy to share a code in the chat. We'll do that as well. It is WHM 2024, and it will give you 50% off on any of our memberships. It's only available during this month, Women's History Month. So last plug is our board bootcamp. We'll also share that link. We do these periodically. It's free for members. If you are not a member, it's great to come to a board bootcamp and access a lot of materials, resources, and then hopefully join as well. So we'll share that link too. And there's the code will also work on board bootcamp. So you can bring that down 50%. So enough about us. Let's get to the point of today. So in today's rapidly evolving job market, the talent crisis is casting a shadow over the potential growth of small and mid-sized businesses. So those are SMBs in the United States. Job openings are surging and they're surpassing the number of available skilled workers. And this is resulting in a vicious cycle of long hiring times, skyrocketing salary expectations, dwindling efficiency, and then, of course, declining productivity in the United States workforce. And this is especially true for SMBs. So what should you do? If you are a founder of a startup or a growth stage company, how should you be reevaluating your hiring strategies? Maybe you're a CHRO, you're an executive, you are contemplating what you can do to make your company stronger. Well, today, to help us answer that question and so many others, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome to the spotlight Rob Levin. So as I mentioned, co-founder and chairman of WorkBetterNow. So Rob, love to hand it over to you to properly introduce yourself, introduce WorkBetterNow, the work you do, and start sharing some answers to these important questions.
Yep. Thanks so much, and thanks so much to the Fourth Effect. We're really excited to be partnering with such an amazing organization. Let's jump right in. We're talking about the talent crisis and how you can beat the talent crisis with retention strategies, attraction strategies, and we're going to go into a few other things that you might not be expecting as well. So let's jump right in. Just really quick, so you understand the perspective from which I'm coming from. As you heard, I'm the co-founder and chairman of WorkBetterNow. Those of you in the New York area who've been in business for a little while, you might remember the New York Enterprise Report, a magazine for business owners. That's something that I founded way back in 2003. I am a serial entrepreneur and I actually started my career as an accountant and got my MBA a few years ago. So as you heard, small businesses, small and mid-sized businesses are in a talent crisis. They've been in a talent crisis for several years now, and it is not going to get any better anytime soon. So what do we mean by talent crisis? First, let's look at what you heard earlier. There is a big difference in job openings versus people that are looking for jobs. And this cascades throughout the entire workforce. It is, among other things, it's driving up wages, which we're going to talk about in a second. Here you go. Most people in the workforce feel underpaid. Job salaries and expectations went up a lot during COVID. They've eased up a little bit, but they're still relatively high. This is, to me, one of the big killers. You know, when you're running a smaller mid-sized business and you finally get around to saying, "Hey, we have to hire somebody," what you really want is you want to hire somebody yesterday. According to LinkedIn, it's taking about 44 days, 6-7 weeks, which is really a long time in the day of a business owner or a manager. And then what I think might be the biggest issue is the diminished productivity, because this is not just about hiring. This is also about the people that are working for you. Hopefully this doesn't apply to you, but you can look at the stats right here. And then there's a stat, whoops. There's another stat that I saw recently. I might have it in the slide, but I want to mention it anyway. About 30% of the workforce has said, "I want to do the minimum at work," which is really scary to hear when you're running a small and mid-sized business, when every single role makes an impact in the company. Here's the stat I was talking about, the 30%. But again, you know, you have this now lazy girl, lazy guy job topic that's been trending a while, to the point where there are almost a third of marketing managers said, I don't want to hire Gen Z, which of course is ridiculous. You know, Gen Z, there's plenty of good people in the Gen Z workforce. And of course, that's going to be a big segment of the working population as time goes by. So this is an issue. Like I said, it's not going away anytime soon. In fact, I heard an economic forecast today saying that the talent crisis is going to get considerably worse over the next years, as the economy is supposed to be doing fairly well. Then let's start to close this section out with a few stats here. Over half of small businesses say that finding great people is a problem. Not only a problem, but their biggest problem. They're finding a third are finding it harder to recruit. And remember that the payroll expense is probably the biggest expense for most small businesses. What does this mean? What is all of this talent crisis? What's the impact? Diminished productivity, frustrated and overworked staff that are likely picking up the slack, definitely unrealized growth. Your customers who have increasing customer expectations are seeing poor customer service, increased costs, and I'm just getting started here. I would imagine if I was watching everybody right now, I'd see a lot of heads nodding. So that's the talent crisis. You know enough about that. Let's now talk about some strategies on what small and mid-sized businesses can do about it. We're going to start talking about retention, attracting, and reskilling. I'm not sure if a lot of people are familiar with that term. If not, I think you will be, certainly by the end of this webinar, and it's something you might want to really think about afterwards as well. We're going to talk about AI and automation, and we're going to talk about alternative sources for talent. Okay, let's start with retention, because you can attract great people, but if you're not retaining, it's just an endless, vicious cycle. So competitive compensation, this is really nothing new, but what I'm going to tell you is, for all the reasons we talked about earlier, there's such demand for A and B players. And your competitors or companies that are not even in your space are probably looking at some of the people that are currently working for you. These people are good performers. They know they are. They are looking to make more money. And, you know, for another company to come along and offer another 5, 10, or maybe more tens of thousands of dollars just to get somebody good is not out of the question these days. So what I'm going to suggest to you is that when it comes to compensation, that you particularly look at your A and B players, and you might want to even think, hey, I might need to make a bigger jump in their compensation just to keep them. Because as you know, if you have to replace an A or B player, it's going to probably cost you more. You have a risk that the new person may not work out. And then you have all that time it takes for somebody to be onboarded and to make an impact. So just consider those things. I'm going to actually mix these two next points. The younger workforce, in particular, is very aggressive about looking for career advancement opportunities. Now, whether they deserve them or not is really not the point here. But I want to now introduce this idea of upskilling and reskilling. And what this means is the idea of taking somebody, whether they work for you today or whether you might be hiring them in the near future, and they have the basic skills that you need, let's say, to do something different in the company, but maybe they don't have all of them. So there's a lot of, I would say a lot of smart employers today are now saying, you know what, it's so hard to find somebody that checks all of these boxes that we're looking for in this position. So I'm going to take somebody that's currently on the workforce, or I'm going to hire somebody that checks most of the boxes. And there's so many external training opportunities now. LinkedIn Learning is something that we're using over at WorkBetterNow. There's so many of these that I'm going to invest in training them, again, usually externally. And in the process, you're giving them new skills, which they appreciate. And then as they can bring new capabilities into your company, that will provide for career advancement opportunities. So it's really a win-win-win. They're getting new skills, which they want. They're getting the advancement opportunities, and you get these new capabilities. Think about something like AI, right? Where there are so many courses out there. You take one or more people from your team or somebody you're going to hire, offer to train them. You're going to now have that AI capability and a very happy employee. Company culture has always been important. In fact, I love the Peter Drucker line, culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's a great line, and I found it to be very true. It's never been more important to have an appealing company culture. Why? The younger workforce is looking for that, looking for more meaning. They're looking for a fun and engaging place to work. But on top of that, your company culture is on display on sites such as Glassdoor, for example. And if you haven't checked out what your employees and former employees are saying on Glassdoor, I highly encourage you to do so. Company culture is a big part of it. Promoting work-life balance, this really accelerated during COVID, of course, as people got a taste of what it was like to work from home. But this is really a trend that started over 100 years ago. 100 years ago, people were working 6 days a week. This is a trend that I think is only going to continue. It's becoming more and more important. So taking a conscious effort, making a conscious effort to do things to promote a better work-life balance will definitely help you with retention as well as attracting new employees. Recognition and rewards. Everybody wants to be recognized. And about a year ago at WorkBetterNow, we started implementing the W Awards. I'm not going to go into the details about that. You can find a blog on our website at workbetternow.com that talks about the W Awards. Very simple, very inexpensive, and very appreciated by our team. Whatever it is, whatever program you have, put in some sort of semi-formal or formal program to recognize people. It'll pay big benefits. And then this last one, something to keep in mind is A and B players do not want to work with C and D players, and they certainly don't want to work with people with bad attitudes. By leaving poor performers or bad apples in the workplace, you are actually increasing the risk of losing your better performers. So it's becoming more and more important. Now, interestingly, when LinkedIn asked the workforce, what are some of the things you're looking for? It's a lot of the things we talked about. I'm not going to go over each one of these. But again, this really matches up with the things that you need to do to retain, and soon we're going to get into attracting new talent as well. So we talked a little bit about this idea of reskilling and upskilling. When you're looking to fill a position, you're going to find candidates that might check most of the boxes, but not all. As I mentioned earlier, this is a great opportunity to maybe pick up that candidate that doesn't check some of those boxes, and then upskill them by providing training, which has just never been easier, to do virtually. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the term employer brand. I probably heard about it about 20 years ago or so. So your company's brand is what a customer, prospective customer, thinks about when they hear your company's name. Well, the same thing works on the employee side. That is, your employer brand is what people think about, what your current employees and your prospective employees think about your company as a place to work. And it's really more important now than ever, now that your employer brand it already exists and is on display at sites like Glassdoor. So if your employer brand is strong, great. Encourage your employees to talk about their experiences on places like Glassdoor. And if it's not where you want it to be, it should be a big focus because it's going to help you with both attraction and retention of talent. You know, a lot of us over the past few years have improved our customer experience because customer expectations keeps going up. I'm going to encourage you to think about potential employees as potential customers as well, and looking at your recruiting and onboarding process and looking for opportunities to improve it, to make it more efficient and effective for the job seeker, for the candidate. An example of this is maybe you have 3 interviews, a 3-interview process. Well, tighten up the cycle time between each interview. I'm not telling you to cut steps unless they're inefficient steps, and many of us have them, whether it's forms that people are filling out or other things, but really tighten that process, make it attractive to potential candidates. It'll go a long way. If you haven't already, definitely consider remote work. Obviously, most of the workforce wants it. I can assure you it works because our company is 100% remote, and we have a very good NPS score, not only with our customers. In fact, it's a world-class score, but also with our workforce as well. So it can be done. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. So, you know, I talked about the ability for companies and the opportunity for them to up and reskill both current and prospective employees. But let's talk about what it does to employee retention and tenure. Very impactful, 60% increase. And again, remember, your company benefits when you do this because you're going to be bringing on new capabilities. Again, the example I used before was AI, which is something I'm sure that's on just about everybody's mind these days. AI and automation. I kind of put these two together. They can work very well together. They also can be very separate. I'm going to actually start out with automation. Automation is now within the reach of a business of any size, whether you're going to do that through your CRM system or you're going to use tools like Zapier. And if you're not familiar with these API connectors, I encourage you to check them out. So many ways to automate repetitive tasks. So many benefits of doing this. Number one, your employees, instead of doing repetitive work, can now do higher level, higher impact work. Number two, in addition to that, you're going to reduce mistakes and you're going to probably improve your customer experience because a computer is going to do things faster than a human any day. Automation is really powerful. We've been doing it for years. We have a policy at WorkBetterNow where anything that can be automated has to be automated. And we're in the process now. We've been doing it for years. We're really in the process now of making sure every process that can be automated is now going to be automated. When it comes to AI, I think a lot of people know AI is a great tool for content generation. Just a couple of pointers as somebody who had a content marketing business about using AI for content generation. It's a great thing for designing emails for customers, for processes. And then when it comes to content that you might, let's say, use on your blog or in your social media, just want to give a word of caution. AI, I think, is great to give you some ideas about what you can blog about. It's also great at the editing phase. Make sure that the tone is right. Obviously, the grammar is excellent and perfect. I do not think it's a good idea to rely on AI for content, let's say, for your blog, because your content for your blog really needs to change somebody's point of view. AI is unlikely to do that. AI is not going to come anywhere near duplicating the expertise that you have. That's really where the content needs to come from. So again, make sure that you're inserting your expertise. That's going to be the content that changes the point of view of the reader. That's going to lead them to look at your brand more favorably. I mentioned earlier, AI is a great thing to help you develop and document and refine policies and procedures. These are things that are going to help your company scale. And there's huge potential with AI to analyze data that you have. Sometime in the middle of last year, the guy who heads up our recruiting took a data on at the time it was about 300 people working for our clients, took out any personal information, had information such as titles and what country these people were from, and AI spit out in a matter of 5 minutes some really interesting observations that he was able to take action on right away. Really powerful stuff. And a lot of people are thinking, well, you know what? I just don't get this AI thing. You know what? When I said about a year ago, when ChatGPT came out, we're going to really get on this AI thing, I knew it wasn't going to be me that was going to lead the way. I knew it was going to be our workforce, which quite frankly, our workforce is, I think, entirely or almost entirely younger than I am. I call them digital natives. I just kind of threw it at them saying, hey, go experiment, go try different things. Let us know what's working. Let us know what's not. And it really, now we're using AI throughout the business, and it was all through just letting people experiment. And we do something now that's a lot of fun. I think it's monthly, where we have AI show and tell, where different people in the company can talk about some of the things they've tried, what worked, what hasn't. And it's one of the I think one of the favorite meetings that happen within WorkBetterNow. So now let's talk about new sources for talent. I'm going to start out with remote talent. I don't think this is new for a lot of people. Again, COVID really accelerated something that was going to happen anyway. But let's just go over let's just go over some of the reasons why people might consider remote in case it's something that you haven't done yet. Number one, you're going to get access to a wider talent pool, potentially lower salaries. If you're in New York, certainly that would apply. You can have lower overhead, of course, because you don't have the office space and all of the other things that come along with having people in the office. With the wider talent pool, there's definitely an opportunity to attract better talent. Let's now talk about how do you actually get the most out of talent. But first, I want to really talk about something that's really important. If you have a great company culture, great. You have a good opportunity to have a solid remote culture as well. If your company culture isn't great, I will tell you that you should probably straighten that out first. Do what you can do to fix that, because your remote company culture will never be better than the in-office company culture, at least from what we've seen. And that said, really, when it comes down to it, managing remote people, the same strategies and tactics for managing remote people are not that different than managing in-office talent. And I'm going to share a couple of things with you along those lines in just a second. So when it comes to managing remote talent, clarity is even more important. So things like working hours. When people are in the office, it's usually a little bit more understood. But when people are remote, when do you start? When do you stop? Are people, what's your policy around somebody maybe taking the kids or picking the kids up from school? Things like that. It's doing something that I call reducing mutual mystification. Nobody's really sure. And when you have that in a remote environment, you have potential for things to go wrong. And then be very clear about responsibilities. When people are in the office, it's just easy to ask. It might be easier to ask somebody, especially somebody that you see every day. When people are working remotely, that might not be as simple as it is in the office. So be very clear about responsibilities and roles. And then how do you communicate? And I'll talk a little bit more about this in another slide or two. Be very clear about how you communicate in a company. And this is one of my favorites. And by the way, this works for in-office talent too. And I'm starting to see more and more companies do this. Define success. What I mean by that is, if you do, you can say this to anybody on your team. Certainly, you should be doing this with remote people. If you do your job well, or when you do your job well, this is what it'll look like. And just explain what that looks like. Use adjectives and when you can, objective metrics. But again, subjective metrics are good here too. Define what success looks like. If you guys have heard of something called Strategic Coach. I would encourage you to check it out. They have a tool called the Impact Filter. It's really about defining success, not telling people how to do things, but what it is that you want as an outcome. It's very important when working with remote people. Now let's talk about some of the tools. Access to data. I'm going to actually combine it with this one here. I think most companies now, their information, their data is out in the cloud, and they're using cloud-based software. I cannot recommend it enough. When you're doing this right, it's little things like you're not going to have multiple versions of files. Instead, you're sending links of files. And this way you don't have to worry about multiple versions. It just makes collaboration so much easier, so much more powerful. These are really, really, really terrific tools. And then this is a little bit beyond my pay grade, but when you have remote people, there are some additional security protocols that you want to have in place. Speak with your IT professional or your managed service provider. Now let's talk about communication, which I alluded to a couple of slides ago. Very, very important with remote talent to have consistent communications, regular one-on-one calls with people in your department, departmental meetings, as well as company-wide calls. We have a company-wide call each week. We have a departmental meeting, at least one each week, and then we do one-to-one calls periodically on a regular basis as well. Whenever possible, although there is some people now who are a little tired of Zoom fatigue, but when there's a video call, you can read body language, obviously, over just voice. Whenever possible, take advantage of that. By the way, a little trick that I like is I turn off my self view. Apparently that a lot of people just get tired of looking at themselves all day on Zoom, and I think with all the other tools, you can turn yourself off in the video, and apparently it's a little lighter on the psyche. Remember, there's no water cooler, right? So you have to you might have to over communicate. And this is, again, really easy to do. I alluded to this earlier with the W Awards. Highlight the success of all team members, but especially your remote team members. It's good for team building. It's good for them to feel like they're contributing to success when they're working from their homes. Whenever possible, foster informal connections. This could be anything like there's an amazing woman on our team who is in Colombia, and she leads yoga classes. I think they're weekly for the team. That fosters informal connections, plus hosting in-person get-togethers. Okay, now when it comes to hiring, in our experience, not everybody's made to work remotely. Some people just need that in-person environment. So you want to try to assess what's their ability, how competent, how comfortable they're going to be to work remotely. There's not really one way to do this, but I'd encourage you to at least have that discussion with people that you are thinking of hiring for remote work. Ask them what they love about work, for example. What do they not like? And things will come out in that discussion. You want to get an understanding of how important it is to be in the same or similar or adjacent time zones, 1 or 2 time zones away. How important is that going to be in your company for that particular position? Cultural alignment, I think, is just as important remote. It may be even more important remotely as it is for people working in the office. At WorkBetterNow, just sharing our experience, we have 6 core values. And everybody who we're bringing onto the team has to be very well aligned with those 6 core values. Obviously, you want people to have, as I alluded to earlier, the right setup and connectivity. If they're going to be using their own laptop, and your IT professional will definitely have a say in that. Is the laptop going to or the desktop, is it powerful enough to do what they need to do? Is their internet connection strong enough? These, by the way, are problems that if it's not strong enough, either their technology or their internet bandwidth, these are usually easily fixable problems. And then lastly, I did mention I started my career as an accountant, so I have to say, if you're hiring people from different states, you just let your accountant know there's some things you're going to have to do to make sure everything's copacetic with the state and possibly local jurisdictions. Okay. So we talked about remote, and then what you were starting to see, a trend that big businesses started maybe 40 years ago. A lot of small and mid-sized businesses, like our clients, are really hopping on the bandwagon, which is this opportunity to leverage overseas talent. So why overseas? So yes, in almost most of the regions, at least most of the regions that people tend to hire from, which is Europe, sorry, not Europe, Asia and Latin America, there you are going to see a cost savings, but I'll come back to that in a second. Really, first and foremost, we're looking for people who have great experience, who have a great attitude, who are committed to your business. And there's a lot of people throughout the world that have these things, as well as fantastic English abilities and capabilities. If you work with a talent partner, companies like WorkBetterNow, and we're one of many, you actually have the ability to hire faster, sometimes in as little as, often in as little as 2 to 3 weeks. And again, when you work with a talent partner where these employees will actually not be on your payroll, you have the opportunity for far fewer lesson regulatory issues to deal with, as well as lower overhead. And as I mentioned earlier, because the cost of living is considerably lower in these countries, lower salaries. And, as everybody is facing more, seems like we're all facing more margin pressures year to year. This is a great way to combat that. What can overseas professionals do? I'm not going to go through all of these. By the way, we do not necessarily supply all of these, but again, this is not about WorkBetterNow. This is really about what is a good opportunity for you in your business to tap into overseas talent. As you can see, it's very wide ranging, and these are just a few. There is not much that people overseas cannot do. Just as an example, we provide over 40 roles to our clients. And like I said, there's a lot of companies out there that do what we do. So what have companies been able to achieve with overseas talent? RDS company here in New York City. Larry's somebody I've known for 20 years. He has 8 or 9, I forgot exactly what he's up to, 8 or 9 people that are in Latin America that are working for his company. And I hope you can read all of this, everything from sales, and one of my favorite, fleet safety manager. Javier is in Panama, and he gets, Larry's got a lot of drivers. They have an app that tells them how safe they are. Javier gets that information, and from Panama helps them improve their driver safety scores, and which results in lower insurance premiums and, of course, better safety records for RDS delivery. So these are just a few of the roles. Daniel Todd, his company is spread out all over North America. Daniel's based in Arizona. These are people hired, I think, over in the last 6 months. And you can read here. I'm not going to read what Daniel had to say, but it's working very well for his company. This is and he's more on the mid-size business, and he seems to be hiring another overseas professional about every 2 months or so. Now, where to source from? Big world out there. Here are some of the things to think about. How important is time zone alignment? Are these people going to be working alongside with your team, in which case time zone alignment is going to be a little bit more important? Or are they going to be working kind of on their own? For example, a lot of people go to Asia talent for data entry, in which case time zone alignment may not be as important. Also, people have different feelings about this, but of course there are people in time zones far from us, again, like Asia, where those people will work in the middle of the night in order to work the same hours as the company in the US that they're working for. People have different feelings about that. So you have to gauge. That's one of the criterias to use when you're trying to think of what part of the world to source from. Next is the importance of English proficiency. And I'll encourage you to think about 2 parts of English proficiency. There's written and then there's verbal, because you'll find a lot of people that have fantastic written English proficiency, but maybe not as well on the verbal side. And if they're not communicating often verbally, that may not be very important to you. If they're customer facing, obviously, that's going to be very important for you. And different parts of the world tend to have different levels of accents, and you got to kind of work all of that through to make sure you're for the role that you're hiring for, you're hiring somebody that has the English proficiency that you need for that particular role. And last if not least, how important are cultural similarities for the role, for your company's culture, etc. I mentioned this concept of a talent provider, of which WorkBetterNow is one. These are companies that will do a lot of the work for you. They will screen the candidate. They have a pool of candidates that have been well screened, background checks, all of that stuff. They will, in some cases, hand match that talent with your business, and also you don't have to worry about putting these people on your payroll. So if you're going to look to one of these talent provider companies, here's a number of questions that you want to get answers to. How do they actually evaluate the worker skills? What's their process to do that? Because they're doing a lot of that legwork for you. How do they gauge personality and, I say attitude alignment, but really more cultural fit within your company? How do they understand that about the candidate and know about what you want and make sure that there's a good match there? Because the soft skill match is just as important as whether or not somebody has those hard skills, those experience that experience that you're looking for. What is their interview process like before that they're even presenting candidates for you? How are they evaluating English proficiency, and how are they actually matching candidates with prospective clients? These are just a few questions to ask. That's really the bulk of the presentation. Just a quick 2 seconds on WorkBetterNow. We are a talent provider. We work exclusively from Latin America. We put people in seats in about 2 weeks. We do about 40 different roles on our site. You can get a list of those roles. We have a dedicated success coach, and no long-term contracts, and each professional is $2,350 per month. So now ready to take any questions that have come up, and then for those people who are looking to fill a role and want to explore, there's a special offer here as well. Now ready for questions.
Hello, Rob. You know what? I'm just going to jump in here and I'm going to ask some of the questions that have come into the chat.
Great.
Okay, so there is a question about Gen Z. I want to start there. Okay, so do you feel remote work arrangements cater to the younger Gen Z worker?
100%. I haven't seen a breakdown in a while in terms of the different generations in the workforce and how they prefer remote work. First of all, most generations today prefer at least some ability to work from home. Gen Z is definitely one of them. That said, there are plenty of Gen Zers that want to be in an office because they feed off of that. So that goes back to what I said earlier about assessing somebody's ability to work remotely.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Another question about approximating the water cooler bonding moments. So especially given, hybrid and remote work environments becoming the new normal, do you have any specific tips where it's successful to approximate those moments?
Yeah, to duplicate that. So, it's something I mentioned earlier about coordinating online get-togethers that aren't work-related, whether that's something that we're doing like these online yoga classes, online happy hours, which I think a bunch of us did during COVID. Those things are effective. And also something else that I'm not sure if I think we're still doing this, where when you do these all hands meetings, which involve both in-person and remote work, we are still doing this. I apologize. You have a little maybe 5-minute section where somebody talks about themselves, like where they grew up and their hobbies and things like that. These are things that would happen normally at the water cooler, but you can easily facilitate online.
Right. No, I love that. Getting creative. Okay, let's see. Okay, AI, like you mentioned, obviously top of mind for many people. Are there some very specific examples you can share of companies that you've seen that have effectively leveraged, maybe like actual, individual AI tools that have enabled them to kind of replace headcount?
So we don't always talk about replacing headcount, which by the way can be done. It's also about it's really about 2 things. Number one, making it so that the headcount that you do have, the people that you do have, these people are working on tasks that involve their brain, as opposed to these tasks that a computer can do faster. So I got to tell you, there are so many. Obviously, you have things like ChatGPT that could document processes, can figure out how to respond to a client in a very eloquent way. I would actually say AI is more of an experimenting thing. I mean, we're using AI. Okay, let me back up. We're using AI now in the recruiting function, where we're training AI on what we're looking for, and they're able to do some of the first levels of screening. So that's one advantage, where we don't have to hire as many people in the recruiting department as we continue to grow. And of course, we're testing it. We want to make sure that we're not leaving people out that should be in, and vice versa. I would really encourage people to look even more into automation. So many things can be automated. And here's a little tip. You can, automation's built into a lot of CRM tools. And I think most companies now have some level of CRM tools. We use HubSpot, but there are so many out there. Almost all of them have automation built in. And here's the tip. You can actually use the automation in your CRM for operations. So when a client comes on board, for example, it kicks off an automation to the HR department, to the department where that person's going to work. It sends out notification to all staff, hey, we have a new person. All these things that people used to do manually. And now that person who used to do all of that stuff has a lot more time available to them. There are so many tools and applications to use this stuff. I would encourage you to check out Zapier. They have a great blog. It's I think one of the best blogs around, where they just constantly give you ideas on how you can automate, and now how you can integrate AI into various automation. But the most important thing on the AI side is just to experiment. Just say, hey, I think AI can help me here. Let me just dig into it. And if you don't want to do it as the business owner, or you're apprehensive about it, ask somebody else in your workforce to do it.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And that's a great tip. Now, that was Xavier. I just want to make sure people heard that. Xavier blog.
Zapier. I'm going to put it in the chat right now. Whoops. And there are other companies. Whoops, I didn't put it in the general chat. Sorry about that. There it is. Tons.
Okay.
Zapier.
Okay.
Yeah, Zapier's. Tons of examples in their blog. I mean, they do a great job with the blog. I guarantee you'll spend a few minutes there. You get a few ideas right away that you can implement pretty easily.
Well, I love that. And it's really interesting that you mentioned HR teams using AI to help in the recruiting process. I actually have heard some very compelling arguments that, in fact, it can really decrease bias in that process, because, even though you would assume, okay, yes, there's concern and fear about AI perpetuating bias, but in fact, AI now, there are these tools that have been trained to get out in front of that bias that humans, that's unconscious, that humans don't even realize that they're affected by.
100%. I do want to offer a word of caution. Some jurisdictions are putting, they have some rules about using AI in the recruiting function. So you want to make sure, depending on where you're doing business and where you're doing recruiting, that you're compliant with that.
Very, very good disclaimer. Okay, another question. Do you feel that the employees today are more personal goals focused over company goals? And if you speak to them about how your culture will help them hit their goals faster than other roles enhances your EB?
It's a great question. I'm a little concerned about doing a generalization. I mean, the data that comes up, because that's something I look at all the time. The data that comes up, sorry, I want to see if I can make these go away. The data that does come up tends to say that the younger workforce is more focused on their personal goals, their personal life, et cetera. Obviously it's going to vary person by person. Regardless of that, the more you can, let's talk about something I mentioned earlier about career advancement, right? And the fact that people want to acquire new skills. Think about that as not as a negative, but as a positive. Business is getting more the pace of change in business is increasing. It feels like by the day, and it's just increasing faster and faster and faster. What that really means is that there are so many new things that you got to learn in your company. AI is one of them, right? The way you market is changing so often. Your customer expectations are changing so often. And in order to not get left behind and see decreasing margins, you in the company, you have to bring on new capabilities. You have to bring on capabilities. How are you going to market now, given the way customers' buying habits are changing, right? And how are we going to leverage AI and automation? And if you can put all of this together by providing training opportunities for current and new employees, that gives them the opportunity to grow. And most of them, not all of them, but most of them do want to grow. They do want to acquire new skills. That can lead to advancement opportunities. Even if they're small promotions, they're still promotions. And you're getting the capabilities that you need. So it's not necessarily, don't always look at that as a negative. It can be a positive as well.
Okay, no, that is a great answer to a great question. And then I do have to ask a question that any other general counsel on this call might be wondering, which, has to do with just the compliance component of the service that WorkBetterNow is offering the companies that are using this as the way to tap into offshore talent versus, say contracting just directly with someone in a different part of the world. So, this question, I saw a question come in mentioning Safeguard Global. And so it's really kind of related to that. Like, so is WorkBetterNow a PEO, global PEO provider like Safeguard Global, where you're getting out in front of all of the local human resource, tax, compliance, legal concerns connected to talent in those jurisdictions?
Yeah, so I'm not an attorney, so this is not legal advice. First of all, our HR attorney is a client. He's at a mid-sized law firm here, so that was one stamp of approval for sure. As a U.S. company, you are subject to U.S. laws, and obviously we worked with attorneys in Latin America to make sure we're doing what we need to do there. But there's a new, it's not a new law, but a new regulation, I think, with Department of Labor, that's going to make it harder and harder to classify people as independent contractors. When you work with a company like WorkBetterNow, who's working with, first of all, because they're not on your payroll and you're paying a company, you're not paying the individual, I don't think you have to worry so much about the independent contractor issue. But particularly when they're not in the country, that issue goes away. So our clients are telling us that they have all the compliance issues kind of go away when they work with a company like us, which is part of the advantage of working with these talent partners.
Right. And I, my background coming at this, being a general counsel for the SME, rapidly growing startups, this frequently crops up for companies looking for overseas talent. And it just seems sometimes seductively easy to just directly contract with these individuals, but it can create a nightmare versus going with a partner like WorkBetterNow, is in the end just such a more efficient way to deal with bringing on that talent. So I think it's an important point. Okay, maybe time we have another last question from Bill Fanning. So what company culture trends or best practices have you seen improve the minimalist work mentality that is growing in our workforce?
I would answer that question a little differently. I think first and foremost, you want to hire people when you're running a small or even a mid-sized business. When you're running a small or mid-sized business, every person counts, right? When you're if you're in a big business, 10,000 people, you can't say that, right? Maybe not. Every role probably doesn't have such a big effect as it does in a small business. So the first and foremost, hire people that are behind what you do. They identify with your culture. They are gonna, as a business owner, you have goals for the business. They're gonna get behind those goals. And of course, you're gonna make it exciting for them and interesting for them, not just in terms of compensation, but you're gonna make it a meaningful place to work. So first, it starts really with actually, it starts really with your core values, and then recruiting according to your core values. And then it's a lot of the things that we talked about, making it fun, making it rewarding, making it challenging, but in a good way. All, those things, as well as things like having a good recognition and reward system, providing those opportunities for growing within the company. Those are the things that are working very, very well. They're certainly working well in our company. We're very, we're rapidly growing, and we're getting great feedback from our team.
Well, that's great. That's that really helpful. And I love the recognition and rewards. I think that's sometimes it's outsized return, for what really can be a small upfront investment. So I think that's a great point. And I wonder if, and also in the chat, we hear great answer. Thank you. I wonder if you actually have seen any very specific like recognition rewards, like whether it's, like a gift card or some sort of, sweepstakes or contest, like anything creative like that you've seen that you think is maybe a great way to do it.
So I've seen a lot of things from gift cards, prizes, then or sometimes it's like you get points towards a bigger prize like a vacation or something like that. But here's what I'm going to tell you. The best part about that is the recognition. I remember, so we have these things, as I mentioned, called the W Awards. And I remember we had a member of our team who redid our website. I'm going to spare you in the details. She did an incredible job. And she worked months and months and months on it. And she did a great job. And when one particular week, I gave her a W Award. And I can tell you that without going into the details, the monetary side of it is nothing that big, but just the recognition in front of her peers and the look on her face it's etched in my mind. She was so proud and happy. That's really what it's all about. I think it's less about the prizes. It's more about the recognition.
I love that. I see Kat saying she loves that so much. I love that so much too. That's so true. That's so true. So thank you for all of this. I think we've gotten through all the questions in the chat at this point. I'm just going back and double checking. But if you want to kind of bring us home here, Rob, with the last, couple of minutes, if you have maybe some final, just tangible takeaways, if there's one thing you want to leave everyone with here in this room, I know you have this really great special offer up, anything like that you want to kind of leave people with.
I think the most important thing is just to understand that the talent game has changed a lot recently. It's going to continue to change, which means the way you think about talent needs to change. I hope that at least some of the ideas that I shared with everybody resonate and just put them into action. Just try things out. Business, not to mention life, is really just a series of experiments. And the most important thing is just to realize things are changing, and you probably have to adapt to those changes. And I guarantee you, all the things that I mentioned, by the way, all are things that we have implemented at WorkBetterNow, including this whole nearshore thing. I mean, our entire team, other than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, now 6 people, our team of, 32, 33 people are all based in Latin America. I was just in the Dominican Republic with my partner last week, meeting with our leadership team because they're all based there. We meet in person 2 times a year. We're a company that's going to make the Inc. 5000 in our first year eligibility this year, and it's all run in throughout Latin America, about 19 different countries. So whatever it is that works for your company, changing the way you retain, attract, going offshore, nearshore, using AI and automation, lots of opportunities for you to win the talent game.
I love it. That's great. Thank you for that final takeaway. And thank you everyone for coming today to this just excellent conversation with Rob and Work Better Now. So thank you all.